The show opens with a 15-year-old girl named Ginny sitting in class, lost in her thoughts and disconnected from everyone around her. She constantly feels alone because she has no friends, and her classmates treat her like an outsider. Ginny snaps back to reality when a teacher calls her over for a private word, breaking the news with sympathy that Kenny, her mother's husband, has been in an accident and passed away. At the funeral, Ginny and her little brother Austin stand by Kenny's coffin, saying their prayers, while their mother Georgia stands at the center of the room crying. But it's clear she isn't truly mourning her husband. Her tears are more about winning people's sympathy. She goes on to tell everyone that Kenny was a kind man who treated Ginny and Austin as his own children. Meanwhile, Amber, Kenny's first wife, is also at the funeral. She leans over to her friends and whispers that Georgia is nothing but a liar, insisting Kenny wasn't a good man at all, and that Georgia only cares about the fortune she's inheriting. Amber is bitter, knowing that most, if not all, of Kenny's money will go to Georgia and her kids, leaving nothing behind for her. Sometime later, Georgia packs up and moves with her children to a small town called Wellsbury, a place where everyone knows each other and life feels simple and cheerful. While the community welcomes them, Ginny struggles to feel the same happiness, since all she's ever wanted was stability, something she never had because her mother is always breaking up with partners and dragging them to new towns. That's why Ginny has no real friends and finds it hard to trust people. Still, as soon as she sees how beautiful Wellsbury is, she starts to feel a shift. After they settle into their new home, Georgia notices their neighbor Ellen arguing with her son Marcus in the street after catching him smoking weed, which could have easily gotten him arrested. A little while later, Ellen comes over to Georgia's house to welcome her, and from that moment, the two women begin a new friendship. In the middle of the night, Georgia is still awake in her room when she notices Marcus sneaking back home. She steps outside to meet him, takes some of the weed he has on him, smokes a little, then thanks him casually before heading back inside. The next morning, Georgia walks Austin to his new school, where she gets introduced to other parents. The most notable among them is Cynthia, a successful real estate agent. After a brief chat, the parents invite Georgia to a special school meeting to discuss the kind of food being served to students. Although she couldn't care less about the subject, she agrees to attend just to meet more people and widen her circle. At the same time, Ginny is starting her first day at her new school. With all her past struggles making friends, she's nervous and worried this year will be just like before, lonely and isolating. In her very first class, she notices the teacher's blatant bias, always focusing on white historical figures and ignoring anyone else. As a biracial girl whose skin is darker, Ginny calls him out on his prejudice in front of everyone, boldly voicing her opinion. Her courage instantly earns the admiration of her classmates, who are impressed by her strong personality. After class, Ginny runs into Marcus, who clearly takes an interest in her, and soon after his twin sister Maxine approaches as well. Maxine, having witnessed Ginny's stand against the teacher, is drawn to her confidence and invites her to meet her group of friends. The crew consists of 3 boys, Jordan, Brody, and Hunter, and 2 girls, Nora and Abby, with Maxine as the lively center of it all. Ginny spends her lunch break with them, thrilled to finally feel like she belongs and to have genuine friends for the first time. Meanwhile, Georgia decides to carve out a little time for herself. She heads to a popular restaurant in town where she meets Joe, a charming and helpful waiter whose easygoing nature immediately catches her attention. From the local papers, Georgia learns that the town's current mayor is Paul, a man who spends most of his time working and preparing for re-election. When Paul shows up at the same restaurant to pick up food, Georgia deliberately bumps into him, spilling his order so she can strike up a conversation. With her charm and striking looks, she barely has to try. Paul quickly agrees to sit down and have lunch with her. During their meal, Georgia casually mentions she's been looking for a job and hints that she'd like to work with him. But when Paul finds out she has no political experience, he politely refuses and apologizes. Meanwhile, Ginny and Maxine are on their way home when they spot Georgia sitting with Paul through the restaurant window. Maxine is surprised at how Georgia managed to catch the attention of such an important man on her very first day in town, while Ginny is worried her mother might fall into another relationship and repeat the same cycle as always. Later, Maxine brings Ginny over to her house to study together, where Ginny opens up about herself. She shares how constantly moving around has left her isolated without any real friends, and how it's shaped her personality. Afterwards, Afterward, Ginny heads home, but as soon as she steps outside, she sees Marcus waiting by his house with his motorcycle. She hops on, takes it for a spin around the neighborhood, and it's clear she's starting to develop feelings for him. But suddenly, another girl shows up, claiming Marcus's attention. Ginny assumes they're together, and the thought stings, leaving her upset. The next day, Georgia goes to pick Austin up from school and notices some kids bullying him. Without hesitation, she steps in to protect her son and learns that the boy picking on Austin is named Zach, Cynthia's son, the same woman she met earlier. Georgia pulls Zach aside, then encourages Austin to stand up for himself, telling him to hit back and claim his ground. Afterward, she brings Zach over to Cynthia, pretending with a straight face that he simply fell and injured himself. At the same time, Hunter asks Ginny out and invites her on a date, and she's thrilled. This is the first time anyone's ever asked her like that, so she says yes, and Maxine and Georgia both get her ready, buzzing with excitement. Georgia, especially, feels like her little girl is finally growing up, but she warns Ginny to be careful and not repeat her own past mistakes in relationships. Ginny arrives at the date shy and awkward, and soon learns Hunter is the smartest guy in their class, and that a lot of girls wish they were dating him. Meanwhile, Ellen drops by to visit Georgia, and they sit and talk. Georgia opens up about her previous marriages, explains that Ginny and Austin don't share the same father, and says Ginny's dad is a decent man who still keeps in touch and checks on their daughter, while Austin's father wasn't a good man and is currently in jail on a fraud charge. Only Georgia admits to Ellen that she manufactured that charge to get rid of him. She goes on to say he never even tries to contact his son, so she used to write letters herself and give them to Austin, pretending they came from his dad. Later, Georgia goes to the school meeting about the students' food, where Paul says they want to serve organic meals, but the school can't afford it. Georgia surprises everyone by announcing she's brought Joe on board. He's agreed to supply farm-fresh food to the school at a reduced price. But Georgia is furious because she's learned Joe brings in trainee workers to the restaurant and has been illegally putting them on full-time shifts, so she seizes the chance and strong-arms him. If he doesn't accept her deal, she'll report him. Paul is impressed with Georgia's quick thinking, and because of that, he agrees to hire her on his campaign. Meanwhile, Ginny is in her room when Marcus suddenly climbs in through the window, joking around and trying to get to know her better after she caught his attention that morning. The next day, Georgia joins the team at Paul's office, where she meets Nick, his most well-known staffer. Nick updates Paul on the latest news, telling him that the Green Garden Clinic project has been shut down by the city's planning department. Paul, frustrated since the project is a centerpiece of his re-election campaign, demands they find a solution quickly. At school, Austin learns about Star of the Week, where one student is chosen each week to bring something from home that represents who they are. Being the newest student, Austin is picked, and he's overjoyed, excitedly preparing for his moment. That night, Ginny and Maxine are getting ready for a hangout at one of their friends' houses. Because Maxine is worried her mom won't allow it, she lies and says they're going to the movies instead. Georgia happens to be at their house at the time, and from the way Maxine is dressed, she immediately suspects the story is a lie, but reassures Ellen she'll figure out the truth easily. Later, Georgia checks Maxine's Instagram account and notices she hasn't posted any recent photos of herself. Realizing there must be a second, secret account, Georgia digs around until she finds it, and from the pictures, she confirms the kids are at a friend's house. When Ginny comes home, Georgia waits for her in her room and asks where she really was. Ginny tells the truth right away, knowing her mother can see through everything, and Georgia is pleased. She gently advises her daughter to be cautious and not to trust people too easily. The next day, Austin takes his father's letters to school, proudly showing them off and telling his classmates that they're what makes him special and help him feel close to his dad. The teacher is touched, but Zach mocks him and laughs, bullying him in front of the others. Meanwhile, after school, Ginny goes shopping for new clothes with her friends. She notices Abby slip some accessories into her bag, so Ginny impulsively takes a pair of earrings and steals them too. But the shop owner catches Ginny in the act and immediately calls her mother. Georgia shows up and, with her quick wit, manages to diffuse the situation before it escalates to the police. She accuses the shop owner of racism for searching Ginny, but not the rest of her friends, and the owner, worried about the accusation, backs off and lets them go. Later, Georgia decides Ginny needs to face consequences, so she drags her to Joe's restaurant and insists he hire her right away so Ginny can learn responsibility. The following day, Georgia sends sweets to Austin's classroom with a note saying Zach isn't allowed to eat them because of a medical condition. A petty but clever way of getting revenge for the way he bullies her son. After school, Georgia takes the kids out for some fun, and when she spots Paul at the club, she uses the opportunity to introduce him to them, planting the seeds of familiarity. That night, Amber, Kenny's first wife, sits with Jasper, the private investigator she's hired. They talk about the inheritance case, and Jasper explains he's been digging into Georgia's past. He's discovered her real name is Mary, and that she ran away for 4 years after being abused by her stepfather, only to return later under a new name and a reinvented identity. Jasper decides it's time to approach Georgia directly, hoping to uncover more. The next day, Georgia calls her lawyer to check on the progress of the inheritance case, since she's now completely out of money and struggling to support the kids, especially after enrolling them in an expensive school alongside the wealthy elite of Wellsbury. The lawyer tells her the case will take more time, and for now, they'll just have to wait. After that, Ginny asks her mom for $100 because there's a school event coming up, a full day of games, music, and dancing, where the students will even stay overnight at school. Georgia finds out that their neighbor Ellen is the one organizing the whole thing, so she decides she'll do whatever it takes to get the money for Ginny. At the same time, Maxine is trying to convince her mom to let her attend, but Ellen is firmly against it, since Maxine is still grounded for lying about going to the movies. While they're arguing, Georgia walks in, and within minutes, she manages to charm Ellen into letting Maxine go. Not only that, but Georgia also convinces Ellen to let her help organize the event, which Ellen happily accepts, relieved to have someone to share the responsibility with. Later, Georgia scrambles to find a babysitter for Austin, but can't secure one on such short notice. So Paul offers to step in, and she agrees. That same day, Ginny starts her first shift at the restaurant, and her very first customer is Marcus. Still frustrated and confused about his mixed signals, she treats him coldly and with an edge. Joe notices her behavior and quietly reminds her that no matter what's going on personally, she can't treat customers like that. When the night of the school event arrives, Ginny and her 3 closest friends show up wearing matching outfits, having officially named their group Mang. Georgia and Ellen stand outside the school to welcome students, and Ginny pulls her mom aside, begging her to just act normal and not do anything to draw attention the way she always does. Inside, the party is everything Ginny hoped for: dancing, drinks, selfies, laughter. For the first time, she feels like she truly belongs, surrounded by friends who accept her. Meanwhile, Georgia seizes her role as organizer to take control of the money box, offering to deliver it safely to the principal's office. But instead, she uses the opportunity to steal some of the cash, giving herself the funds she desperately needs to get by. In the middle of the event, Ginny's hair gets messed up from all the games and pictures, so she slips away from her friends and heads to the bathroom to fix it. She's startled to find Marcus sitting alone inside. He opens up, telling her he lost his best friend 2 years ago to cancer, and ever since then, he hasn't enjoyed parties or being around people. Ginny is touched and feels for him, and he also admits that he's not actually dating Padma. They're just friends. As they talk, Georgia suddenly walks into the bathroom, and Ginny rushes out quickly, dragging Marcus with her, so her mom won't see them together. After the party, Hunter approaches Ginny and tells her he wants her to be his girlfriend. Even though Ginny isn't sure about her feelings, she doesn't know if she really likes Hunter or if her heart leans more toward Marcus. She agrees, mostly to avoid being the only girl without a boyfriend. Marcus overhears the exchange, his face falling before he walks away, upset. In the days that follow, Hunter and his band start preparing for an upcoming music competition, and he spends long hours practicing, leaving Ginny alone again. She begins to feel that Hunter never really liked her in the first place, that she was just someone to pass the time with. Meanwhile, Georgia attends a PTA meeting where she learns the school hosts a bake sale every year to raise money. She boldly suggests replacing the bake sale with a casino night, arguing it would attract wealthy businessmen and generate far more profit. Cynthia quickly shoots her down, insisting the bake sale is a long-standing tradition they can't abandon. The final word rests with Paul as mayor, and after a few moments of consideration, he sides with Cynthia and rejects Georgia's idea. Frustrated, Georgia storms out of the meeting. The next day, Georgia shows up at work and finds Paul waiting for her with the office's HR manager. Paul tells her that when he was at her house watching Austin, he noticed credit cards under Austin's name, and he suspects she might be committing fraud by stealing her own son's Social Security. Georgia immediately shifts into performance mode, tears welling up as she claims Austin's father was a con man who tried to scam even his own child, but that justice was served when he ended up in prison. Paul feels guilty for doubting her and apologizes several times, assuring her that he trusts her completely and even considers her his sharpest employee. Georgia takes advantage of the moment to bring up the casino night idea again. insisting that traditions don't matter as much as raising the most money possible. After a long back and forth, Paul finally agrees and informs Cynthia of his decision. Cynthia fumes at being sidelined, bitter that Georgia has managed to win Paul over, but she can't openly oppose him. Since the idea was Georgia's, she is put fully in charge of planning it, which terrifies her. If the fundraiser fails and raises less than last year, she'll look like a complete disaster in front of Cynthia. Determined, she throws herself into preparations until the night of the event arrives. Paul is thrilled with the setup, but halfway through, Georgia learns they've only raised about $3,000 so far, which is less than the previous year's bake sale. Thinking quickly, she grabs the microphone and announces a live auction to spice things up. She starts by offering a special dinner from Joe's restaurant and horseback riding lessons at his farm. The crowd responds enthusiastically, and one bidder alone pledges $500. Riding that momentum, Georgia unveils a second auction item, something outrageous. The school principal has agreed to auction off his position for a day, giving the highest bidder's child the chance to act as principal. The crowd erupts with laughter and interest, and suddenly the fundraiser turns into a lively competition. At that moment, the bidding war between the parents heats up, especially those eager to see their kids in a leadership role. The offers keep climbing until the auction reaches $10,000. With her signature quick wit, Georgia convinces the principal to extend the prize to 2 days instead of 1, meaning 2 kids can share the experience. The crowd loves the idea, and just like that, the fundraiser doubles, raking in an extra $10,000 and ending with an astonishing total. Paul is blown away, more impressed with Georgia than ever before. Meanwhile, Ginny is at another party with her friends, where Hunter and his band are set to perform. To her surprise, Hunter dedicates a special song to her, the reason he's been so distracted lately, and in front of everyone, he confesses his love. Ginny is overjoyed, realizing he hadn't been pulling away from her after all. Later that night, Hunter spends time at her house watching a movie with her, and Georgia can't help but smile, relieved that her daughter finally has friends and seems genuinely happy. Around this time, Georgia learns from Ellen that a man has been hanging around the neighborhood, often watching their house from a distance and even asking if they plan to sell it. Ellen mentions seeing him at the casino night too, which immediately unsettles Georgia. She begins worrying that someone is keeping tabs on her, replaying faces from the fundraiser in her mind, but unable to pinpoint who it might be. One morning over breakfast, Ginny hears that Hunter's performance video has been uploaded to YouTube, already racking up over 100,000 views. She appears in the video too, and when classmates recognize her, she feels an incredible surge of pride and confidence. The next day at school, she's treated like a celebrity. Everyone greets her, and suddenly, she's the most popular girl on campus. Riding that wave of attention, Hunter invites her over to his house to finally meet his family. That night, Georgia goes on a romantic date with Paul after he finally asks her out, swept away by how much he admires her. They share personal stories, opening up about themselves, and it's clear Paul is genuinely taken with her. But across the room, Joe can't hide his sadness as he watches them from behind the counter, knowing he too has feelings for Georgia. Meanwhile, Ginny is at Hunter's house, having dinner with his family. She notices how close and stable they are, and it unsettles her. It reminds her of everything she's lacked her whole life: family unity and consistency. Later, she learns from Hunter's father that Abby's parents are in the middle of a divorce, and suddenly, Ginny understands the root of Abby's constant sadness and mood swings. When Halloween arrives, the entire town comes alive with costumes, decorations, and festivities. Paul seizes the chance to gather the townspeople and update them on his campaign. But Cynthia shows up, grabs the microphone, and launches an attack. She tells everyone that Paul is no longer one of them, accusing him of trying to build an expansion over the town's beloved library and destroy its heritage. She also throws fuel on the fire by reminding them of the casino night and his relationship with Georgia, framing him as reckless and out of touch. The crowd grows restless, and Cynthia uses their anger to officially announce her candidacy for mayor. Paul and Georgia stand there in shock, blindsided and unsure how to respond. Elsewhere, Ginny is at a Halloween party at a friend's house with everyone dressed in creative costumes. Thanks to Hunter's song, which keeps climbing in views online, Ginny is suddenly the center of attention. Everyone knows her name, and she's the star of the night. Back at home, Austin sits alone when he senses something strange. A noise stirs his nerves, and as he looks around, he realizes the front door has been left open. fear creeps in as he cautiously searches, trying to figure out whether someone has entered the house. The party ends late, and Ginny decides to walk her friend Maxine to her room, since Max is too drunk to make it on her own. There, she runs into Marcus, and the two agree to just stay friends, not wanting to risk losing each other. When Ginny finally heads home, she's surprised to find unexpected guests waiting. A woman introduces herself as Maddie, Georgia's sister, and with her is her son, Caleb. Ginny is stunned, realizing Georgia had always claimed she was an only child. The revelation shakes her trust in her mother once again, especially since Georgia has also just started dating Paul after promising her kids she would devote her time fully to them. Ginny grows resentful and distant, while Austin, on the other hand, is thrilled to have a cousin to play with. Georgia tries to calm Ginny down and explain why she lied, but Ginny refuses to listen and storms off to her room. The story then flashes back to Georgia's teenage years, when she was still Mary, a 15-year-old girl trapped in an abusive home with a stepfather who physically assaulted and harassed her. One day, she gathers the courage to run away. On the road, she meets a woman who takes her in, later revealing herself to be the leader of a biker gang that specialized in stealing motorcycles. Mary joins them, and in that moment, reinvents herself as Georgia. One night at a bar, she meets a 17-year-old aspiring photographer named Zion. They fall for each other, and soon after, Georgia discovers she's pregnant. Overwhelmed with fear about the baby she's carrying, she crosses paths with a kind stranger on the road who shares his food with her, and, before leaving, gives her his sunglasses as a keepsake. When Zion's parents learn what happened, they sympathize deeply with Georgia, given how young she is, and invite her to live with them, offering her stability and a safe home as she prepares to bring her baby into the world. Not long after Ginny's birth, Zion's parents offer to take legal guardianship of her, believing that Georgia and Zion are still far too young to raise a child properly. Terrified of losing her daughter, Georgia takes Ginny and runs. She ends up working for a man named Anthony, who lets her stay in his home for free because he's infatuated with her. Sometime later, Maddie tracks her down after running away from home herself, and with nowhere to go, asks for shelter. Georgia takes her in for a couple of days, but quickly realizes she can't handle the responsibility and throws her out. Eventually, Georgia comes up with an idea. She transforms the house into an illegal gambling den, which earns them a fortune. But one night, the police raid the place, and she learns she may lose custody of Ginny because she doesn't have a stable home. Her lawyer advises her to marry Anthony to prove she can provide a safe environment for her child, and reluctantly, she agrees. They wed, but soon after, Georgia spikes his drink and escapes. With nowhere else to turn, she decides to return to Zion. Even though she's been gone for nearly a year, Zion still loves her, and he forgives her. They live together for a while, but eventually he leaves for work abroad, and the two separate. In the present, Austin sits in class when Zach starts taunting him about his mother's reputation and her relationship with Paul. Furious, Austin snaps and stabs Zach viciously in the hand with a pencil. The school immediately calls in Cynthia and Georgia. To everyone's surprise, Georgia admits her son was wrong, insisting he shouldn't have reacted that way, no matter the reason. After lengthy discussion, the principal suspends Austin for several days and orders Georgia to take him to a therapist to address his violent behavior. But as soon as they leave the school and get into the car, Georgia turns to Austin and tells him he wasn't wrong at all, that Zach deserved it and more. Ginny overhears and is deeply disturbed, angry at how her mother is raising her little brother, shaping him into someone aggressive and reckless. Georgia decides to ignore the principal's advice and refuses to take Austin to a therapist. Later, when they get back home, Maddie is waiting, having asked to stay one more night. Georgia seizes the chance to confront her directly, asking why she's really there. Maddie reassures her that she just missed her and wanted to reconnect. That night, Maddie quietly slips into Georgia's room, carrying a stack of childhood photos, pictures Georgia left behind when she ran away all those years ago. Georgia thanks her, but she isn't particularly sentimental and simply sets the photos aside before drifting off to sleep. The next day at the office, Georgia is surprised when Nick introduces her to a new friend, Jessie, and invites her to join them for lunch. Georgia politely declines, preferring to stay behind. In truth, she wants to be alone because she's noticed Paul's checkbook and plans to forge checks to steal money from his account. Meanwhile, Ginny is working her shift at the restaurant when her friends come in, sitting together at a table. Out of nowhere, Maddie shows up and decides to join them, eager to meet Ginny's friends. Ginny is visibly irritated, and as soon as she gets home, she complains to her mother. Georgia isn't surprised at Maddie's behavior, reminding Ginny that her sister has always been intrusive since they were kids. As they're talking, Ginny suddenly gets a message from Maxine. There's a fire in her backyard. Ginny and Georgia rush over in a panic, only to find out that Austin and Caleb had been playing with fire and accidentally set the garden ablaze. Georgia manages to put it out quickly, but the incident leaves her exhausted. Wanting to clear her head after all the chaos of recent days, she decides to spend the evening out. When she arrives at Joe's restaurant, she's stunned to see Maddie already there, sitting comfortably with Joe and striking up a conversation. Georgia sits down to join them, partly curious and partly just looking for a distraction. At the same time, Ginny is at Maxine's house, venting to Marcus and Max about her mother's reckless behavior. She admits, emotionally, that she no longer trusts Georgia and is afraid she's hiding something even bigger. Suddenly, Georgia calls and asks Ginny to come watch Austin and Caleb so they don't cause trouble at home. Ginny brings Max and Marcus along, and the three of them spend the evening playing with the boys to keep them entertained. A few hours later, Georgia and Maddie return drunk, with Joe dropping them off. Maddie stumbles to her room, barely aware of her surroundings, while Georgia seizes the opportunity to snoop through her sister's phone. She discovers a series of messages between Maddie and a man named Jasper, offering her $10,000 to spy on Georgia. Furious, Georgia realizes Jasper is the private investigator hired by Amber. When she searches his name online, she's shocked to find his photo. He's the same man she just met that day as Jesse, Nick's so-called friend. It all clicks. He's been planted in Wellsbury to keep tabs on her. The next day, Ginny spends time in the kitchen with her aunt, trying to learn more about their mother's past. Maddie doesn't reveal much, only that it's been 10 years since they last saw each other, and that they're half-sisters, not from the same father. Moments later, Georgia enters with Maddie's bags already packed, ordering the kids upstairs so she can speak to her sister alone. She hands Maddie a stack of cash, $100,000, making it clear it's hush money meant to humiliate her for selling her out to Jasper. Georgia coldly orders her to take the money and leave. Maddie, ashamed, apologizes for what she's done, but reminds Georgia that years ago she abandoned her too, leaving her alone on the streets. Their argument escalates, voices raised, until finally Maddie storms out with her son and her luggage, slamming the door behind her. The next day at school, Ginny is still shaken by everything that happened the night before. Unable to focus, she leaves halfway through the day and asks Hunter to drive her home. But instead of resting, she sneaks back early on purpose to search through her mother's belongings. While snooping, she finds childhood photos of Georgia, and then, hidden away, a gun. At the same time, Georgia herself has left work early, too distracted to concentrate. When she arrives home, she senses movement inside and instinctively pulls out the gun she keeps for emergencies. To her shock, it's Ginny rummaging through the house. Ginny admits bluntly that she's been looking for answers, desperate to uncover the truths her mother keeps hiding. Georgia, furious and hurt, slaps her across the face. Not long after, Ginny's 16th birthday arrives. She wakes to find Georgia has prepared a cake, just as she does every year. As they blow out the candles, a delivery arrives, a grand piano from Ginny's father. Overjoyed, she moves it to her room and spends the morning playing. Later at school, her friends surprise her with balloons and pictures of their moments together. In the middle of the celebration, Hunter shows up and dances with her in front of everyone, making her day even brighter. During lunch, Maxine mentions that her parents will be out of town the next day, so she's planning to take advantage of the empty house and host a birthday party for Ginny. Meanwhile, Paul visits Georgia at home, and his bond with Austin begins to grow. Austin opens up to him, confessing his fear of returning to school after what happened with Zach. Paul listens and gently advises him to do what feels right, even if that means apologizing to Zach if he regrets what happened. The following morning, Ginny wakes to find Paul and Georgia's relationship has clearly deepened. Paul spent the night at their house. As they sit down for breakfast together, Ginny's friends suddenly arrive. Georgia steps in with a smile, revealing she invited them herself to throw Ginny a surprise party at home. Even though Ginny is still angry at her mother, she's genuinely touched by the surprise and enjoys spending time with her friends. A few hours later, the four of them are shocked to learn that Georgia has already arranged with their parents for the girls to spend the night at Ginny's house. Since Maxine's parents are away and didn't want her staying home alone, Georgia thought she was doing the right thing. But Ginny is furious. Her plan had been to use Maxine's empty house for a private party. After some plotting, the teens decide to sneak out the window and slip over to Maxine's place without Georgia noticing. Before long, Georgia walks in with snacks and discovers they've run off. Feeling betrayed, she cleverly calls the police to report noise complaints at Maxine's house. Moments later, Ginny and her friends are busted, and the party is ruined. To her shock, it's Paul who shows up at the station to collect her. Expecting him to gloat or scold her, Ginny instead finds him kind, compassionate, and genuinely caring. For the first time, she realizes her mother may have actually chosen a good man. Back home, Georgia waits for Ginny in her room. They sit together, and Georgia, visibly emotional, finally opens up about why she never talks about her past. She reveals the abuse she suffered at the hands of her stepfather and breaks down, leaving Ginny shaken and regretful. Deeply moved, Ginny softens, realizing her mother's life has been far from easy, and chooses to forgive her. The next day at school, Ginny sits in class and feels unsettled when her classmates talk about preparing for college, taking up new sports, volunteering, and building resumes. She realizes no one at home is paying attention to her future or guiding her. Then the teacher announces a writing competition, an essay about the place where each student feels the strongest sense of belonging. The winner will have an excellent chance of getting into their college of choice. Inspired, Ginny grows determined to give it her all and focus on winning the contest. In the middle of the school day, Ginny is stunned when her father Zion shows up in town and comes straight to the school just to see her. Overjoyed, she runs to hug him and introduces him to Hunter before they head home together. Zion explains that he's planning to stay for a few days, and his presence instantly brings warmth to the household. Even Austin quickly bonds with him, treating Zion like the father figure he's always wanted. That evening, Paul comes over for dinner and finally meets Zion. To Georgia's relief, the night goes smoothly. There's no tension or conflict between the two men, and the whole family enjoys a pleasant evening together. Later, Ginny sits with her father and tells him about the essay competition, explaining that she chose to write about their town. But Zion frowns when he realizes she doesn't truly feel connected to it and is just writing to fill the assignment. He urges her to write about something she genuinely loves. To prove his point, he takes her to a local poetry slam, showing her the stark difference between performers who speak from the heart and those who just say words with no meaning. Ginny understands, finally seeing his perspective. Meanwhile, Georgia goes to collect laundry from Ginny's room just as Marcus is sneaking in through the window as usual. Georgia spots him and he panics, bolting away. Later, she confronts Ginny, who brushes it off by insisting Marcus is just a classmate who jokes around with her, and that sneaking in through the window is part of their silly banter. The next day, students present their essays in class. Ginny's piece impresses her classmates. They can feel the emotion in her words. But despite the praise, the teacher announces Hunter as the winner. After class, he tells Ginny that her essay was strong but too unconventional. That night, Ginny and Hunter argue. Each insists they deserve the win, but the fight quickly turns personal. Ginny voices her frustration, feeling the result was unfair and rooted in bias, since all the students agreed her essay was better. Hunter cuts her off, saying it had nothing to do with race. He reminds her that he, too, is often bullied for being Chinese American, yet that didn't stop him from winning. It was his hard work that paid off. The tension escalates until their argument ends with Hunter walking away, leaving things unresolved between them. A little while later, Ginny is hanging out with her friends when Abby shows up in tears. With a shaky voice, she tells them her parents have officially separated and admits she has no idea how to cope. She lashes out, accusing the group of not caring enough to check on her. The four argue, tensions flaring, but after some emotional back and forth, they manage to make up and reconcile quickly. As they sit together, Nora's mother suddenly appears on a TV program, openly attacking Georgia and Paul. On air, she claims Georgia keeps a gun in her house, painting her as dangerous and untrustworthy, someone no one in town should feel safe around. Shocked, Nora apologizes to Ginny, confessing that she once mentioned the gun to her mother without realizing it would escalate this far. That night, Ginny sits in her room, emotionally unraveling. She pulls out a lighter, about to burn herself, her secret method of coping and punishing herself for problems, even ones that aren't her fault. Just then, Marcus climbs in through the window and catches her in the act, asking what she's doing. Cornered, Ginny deflects and lashes out at him instead, cruelly calling him a failure who can't even confess his feelings to the people he loves. Crushed, Marcus leaves, devastated. Despite not being confident on his motorcycle, he takes it out for a ride to clear his head. Almost immediately, Ginny regrets her words and bombards him with apologetic texts, but he doesn't respond. The next day, she confides in her mother about what happened. Georgia calls Ellen, only to find out Marcus has been in an accident. He crashed his bike and is now suffering from a concussion. A short while later, Ginny sees him from her window, covered in bruises as he returns home, and the sight fills her with overwhelming guilt. At school, Maxine shares her heartbreak over Marcus's injury, admitting she desperately wants to know what pushed him to that point. But Ginny stays silent, too afraid to reveal the truth about everything that's been happening between her and Marcus since the day she arrived in Wellsbury. Austin and Zion are at home playing together, and during a game of hide-and-seek, Austin crawls into his mother's closet. There, he stumbles upon a box filled with the letters he had written to his father, letters that were never sent. He realizes Georgia has been writing back to him, pretending to be his dad, and never passed along his own letters to the prison. Devastated, Austin returns to his room in tears. That evening, Georgia picks Ginny up from work. On the drive, Ginny speaks with uncharacteristic bluntness, urging her mother to make up her mind. Does she truly want Zion, or does she want Paul? Georgia admits her heart leans toward Paul, but struggles to commit to the choice. When they arrive home, they find Zion has prepared dinner and suggests they all join Ellen's family for a meal together. Everyone is delighted by the idea, especially Ginny, who is eager for the chance to see Marcus and finally apologize. But when they arrive, Ellen explains Marcus is still unwell and resting in his room. Ginny excuses herself midway through dinner, claiming she's going to the bathroom, but instead sneaks into Marcus's room to check on him. She quietly watches him sleep until Padma, his ex-girlfriend, shows up with notes for the classes he's missed. It's clear she still has feelings for him, yet she tells Ginny outright that Marcus loves her and encourages her to stay by his side. Later that night, back at home, Zion confronts Georgia. He reveals the real reason he came, to ask her to get back together with him. He reminds her of their history, their time together, and the love they once shared. Georgia is visibly moved, torn between her past with Zion and her present with Paul. The next day at work, Georgia pitches a new idea to Paul and Nick. Focus more on charitable projects. It would show the community they care about real issues while also outshining Cynthia. Paul loves the idea and immediately agrees to move forward with it. The four girls gather at Maxine's house as usual, but during the evening, Ginny slips away to Marcus's room to finally talk to him. She apologizes for the hurtful things she said and admits she never meant them. Marcus, clearly moved, forgives her. That night, Zion decides to attend one of the charity events Georgia is organizing. Watching her interact with Paul, catching the way they look at each other, he realizes she truly has feelings for him. Heartbroken, Zion goes home and spends the night alone, wrestling with his emotions. After the event, Georgia sits down with Paul and tells him honestly that Zion wants them to get back together. Paul bristles, reminding her of all the ways they connect and the similarities they share. To prove how serious he is, he pulls out an engagement ring he bought after their very first meeting, confessing he's been certain about her from the start. Georgia is overwhelmed, torn even more deeply between the two men. When she gets home, however, she discovers Zion has already made his choice. He tells her he could feel her love for Paul and has decided to leave before he ruins what they have. He takes his bags and goes to say goodbye to Ginny at her job. Ginny, upset, lashes out at both parents for thinking only of themselves and storms back to finish her shift without even hugging him goodbye. Later, she goes to Marcus's house, but this time she sneaks in through the window, the same way he always does with her. She opens up completely, telling him about all the struggles she's been facing and how badly she needs him by her side. For the first time, she admits she loves him and promises she'll never let him go. They share an intimate moment together, unseen by anyone else. Meanwhile, Maxine is sitting alone watching TV when Marcus's phone buzzes beside her. Curious, she picks it up and is shocked to find Ginny's messages, exposing the secret relationship between her brother and her best friend. At the same time, Jasper continues digging into Kenny's death. He contacts Kenny's doctor and learns that just before his passing, Kenny underwent multiple tests, all of which came back perfectly normal. The doctor admits he's baffled by how suddenly and unexpectedly Kenny died, raising even more suspicion. Through his constant surveillance of Georgia, Jasper notices a strange plant growing on her balcony. After researching it, he learns it's a poisonous flower that can cause cardiac arrest. He pieces together that Georgia likely used the plant to kill Kenny, slipping it into his food just before he left the house. That would explain why his death appeared to be a sudden heart attack while driving. Jasper pushes to have the case reopened, presenting his findings to a judge and requesting an exhumation. The judge grants permission, but when they arrive at Kenny's burial site, they discover the body is gone. Jasper concludes Georgia must have found out and removed the body before they got there. Soon after, Georgia becomes officially engaged to Paul, announcing it publicly to boost his image as a responsible family man and secure more votes. Jasper attends the engagement party under the guise of being Nick's friend, but he and Georgia exchange loaded glances, each fully aware the other knows the truth. The next day at school, Ginny is surprised to find her friends avoiding her, treating her like an outcast. Meanwhile, back at the office, Georgia is shocked when Cynthia storms in, demanding a private meeting with Paul. A short while later, Georgia learns learns that Cynthia accused her of stealing after uncovering the forged checks and concluding Georgia had been siphoning money from Paul. At first, Nick and Paul check with the bank and find the accounts intact, leading Paul to dismiss Cynthia as a liar and throw her out. But afterward, Nick discreetly tells Georgia he knows the money was missing and only reappeared that very morning. He chooses not to confront her fully yet, deciding to wait until after the election. At the restaurant, Ginny is working when Hunter suddenly walks in. He's there to apologize, admitting he wants to get back together and restore what they had. Ginny is overwhelmed, caught off guard, and Joe notices her discomfort. Sensing she needs a break, he gently suggests she step away and get some rest. By chance, Joe notices Ginny carrying an expensive pair of sunglasses. When he asks about them, Ginny explains they belong to Georgia, that she once received them from a kind stranger she met at a roadside stop, and ever since, she's considered them her lucky charm. At that moment, Joe realizes he was that stranger. Years ago, he'd offered Georgia food and kindness when she was at her lowest, and from that day on, he never forgot her. Deep down, he's been in love with her ever since, though he refuses to confess his feelings now, especially knowing she's engaged to Paul. That night is the premiere of Maxine's school play, and the entire student body gathers in the auditorium to watch. Ginny waits until the show ends, then rushes after Maxine, desperate to figure out why she's been so upset. Maxine finally admits she knows about Ginny and Marcus. As the two argue, the rest of their friends arrive: Nora, Abby, Hunter, and Marcus himself, and the truth comes out in front of everyone. Hunter is devastated to learn Ginny moved on so quickly with Marcus. Marcus, trying to defuse the situation, insists it was nothing more than a mistake, but his words sting Ginny, leaving her hurt and angry. The group splinters after a heated confrontation, each one walking away upset with the others. Back at home, Marcus and Maxine get into their own shouting match. Marcus accuses his sister of only ever thinking about herself, never stopping to consider what those around her actually want or feel. Ellen overhears their fight, and when she pieces together that Marcus and Ginny have been secretly involved, she's horrified. She goes straight to Georgia to tell her, but is stunned to discover Georgia already knew and deliberately kept it from her. This sparks a fierce confrontation between mother and daughter. Georgia blames Ginny for her reckless choices, while Ginny fires back that everything wrong in her life stems from her mother's selfishness. Finally, Ginny unleashes the harshest truth she's been holding in, that Georgia is a selfish woman who doesn't know how to be a mother. The next day, Ginny is stunned when Nick's friend James shows up at the restaurant where she works. He asks to speak privately, then reveals the truth. His real name is Jasper, and he's a private investigator. He warns her that Georgia is dangerous, admitting he believes she murdered Kenny and says he's afraid for Ginny's safety. He begs her to help him find proof, especially since Kenny's missing body has left the case with no evidence. Without it, the court ruled in Georgia's favor, granting her the entire inheritance. In that moment, Ginny's mind flashes back to her memories of Kenny, the day he died, when she had seen Georgia slip the poisonous plant into his drink before he left the house. The realization hits her hard. Her mother really did kill him. But even with the truth staring her in the face, Ginny refuses to give Jasper any information. Shaken, she leaves and heads home, lost in her thoughts. Meanwhile, Georgia is preparing for election night, asking Ginny to bring Austin and join her for the results. But Ginny has a different plan. As soon as Georgia leaves the house, she packs a bag, grabs Austin, and runs away with him. That evening, Paul is announced as the winner of the mayoral race. Georgia beams with pride. She has everything she's always dreamed of: a powerful name, public respect, money, a big house, and a family image to show off. What she doesn't realize is that at the very same moment, she's lost the only thing that truly mattered: her children. At the same time, Jasper receives a call with new information. He learns that years ago, Georgia had married a man named Anthony, and within weeks of their marriage, he mysteriously vanished. Seizing on the lead, Jasper decides to dig deeper, convinced he's finally close to catching Georgia. And with that revelation, the first season comes to a close.